Welcome everyone to episode 1 of season 2 of Lockdown Dads. Welcome back. It's great to be here. My name's Ian Dinwiddie. I'm a coach and the founder of a business called Inspiring Dads.
And I'm James Miller, author of Dads Don't Babysit and editor of workingdads.co.uk and father of 2. And yes, welcome back. We've gone global for season 2. Gone global, I think. I don't think we had anybody. I don't think we had any foreigners on the last series, but we've got our first Australian on, and it's our guest this week is Michael Ray. Man from the internet, really. If you ever go on the internet and mention dads, somehow he will find you and say you're great, and you'll say he's great, and you'll end up friends. So we're delighted to have him all the way from Australia. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
No worries. Thanks, James. Thanks, Ian. By the way, we've still got the Ashes waiting for the cricket to resume.
Technicality. It was a draw. And it was only, so I think that's an important thing to say. I could talk about cricket all day, but we're not really here to talk about cricket. Michael, as James said, you're our first Australian. You also live in Victoria, where things are very different experience in terms of lockdown at the moment than we're having here in the UK. Tell us how you're getting on. How are you?
It's a little bit more buckling than the first one. We went into a 6-week lockdown and 2 weeks out, and then all of a sudden we had a flare up in cases, and it looked like it was getting away. And our numbers are nowhere near yours, but we've got a lot smaller population, but it was an exponential growth. So we came out for 2 weeks and then we went back in, and it just seems a little bit more bleak this time, but we've gone a lot harder. We've got a curfew from 8 p.m. till 5 a.m, not allowed out. You need a permitted worker's permit to travel to work. So restaurants, gyms, hairdressers all closed. We're lucky we're in a rural area, so you're not allowed to travel outside 5 kilometres of your home. You're allowed outside once a day for shopping and for 1 hour of exercise per day, and no more than a group of 2.
Now, is this the outbreak? I should have done more research, let's face it. But anyway, when we talk about how I am, I'll explain why I haven't done more research this morning. But is this the outbreak that was caused allegedly by quarantining people and then the security guards? And this does speak to masculinity, I think, because I'm assuming they were male security guards. Well, let's be honest, they started banging the people in quarantine and spreading all the coronavirus around. Did that really happen? Is that why you're all back in quarantine? That's
exactly what happened. And who would have guessed that it's Adam and Eve all over again. It's instead of an apple, it's a bug.
No one's talked about how coronavirus is a sexually transmitted infection, but I think this is groundbreaking from the Australians.
I think this is Darwinism come to fruition.
Is it borderline racist to say that it's the most Australian thing ever? Because a few people have been saying that on the internet, saying, this is just a very Australian outbreak. I don't know if that's entirely fair.
Put it this way, James, that the level of lackadaisical approach to quarantine, I wouldn't want these guys running the prisons.
Are they running the prisons though? I mean, that's a bit worrying. They might be the same people.
Well, what actually happened was a big security company was awarded the contract. They hired someone else who hired someone else, and it went right down where they were hiring security guards off of WhatsApp. And so what started off as quite a nice hourly rate, we had people coming in for less than $20 an hour.
Surely they were hiring them off Tinder, it sounds like, to be honest.
So, Michael, in terms of, you were talking about how things are harder this time round, the sort of second time into lockdown. What have you noticed in particular about your mental health this time, and maybe your daughter's mental health, that's been different from the first time?
I think on the first time we saw it as 6 weeks, the greater good. We could do this. It needed to be done, and then to have it pulled out again. I think the realisation that it may happen again and again now is more at the forefront of our minds. But Yeah, I think that's the main reason. There are a lot of businesses, I think, that were also going, we can hold on, we can get through this, we've got a little bit in reserve. And now they're actually thinking, well, do I want to come back from this when it could well happen again? The opening is going to be gradual now. They're saying before we even look at getting back to term level 1, could well be after Christmas before we even open our borders to interstate at the moment. Each state's locked off. So,
and what's it been like as a dad? I mean, I think we've all had that experience of trying to explain this massive thing to our children, what's going on and why these things are happening. And as you say, you did that once, and then you've got to turn around to your daughter and say, oh, by the way, we're doing it again. Has that been a particularly sort of challenging issue?
Not so bad for my daughter, James, because she's lucky. It was funny today. I've got a book that's been written. I was just writing a chapter on, kids being able to sit secure in their connection and knowing their value, and homeschooling had come in. It was about the third time and actually snapped at her. And I looked at where I was writing and I thought, this is, ridiculous. I'm sitting here writing about giving our kids the time and that. But she's pretty good. Her school's been amazing, like absolutely amazing, focusing on their well-being and their connection. She has more Zoom play dates. She's become a Zoom expert. She's Zoom's nanny, Zoom's her aunties, Zoom's her friends. And, I'm lucky being self-employed that I can actually work around, and we get outside in the bush. We've built teepees in the bush and we go out and just spend an hour skimming stones on the lake, and we get chased around by emus and kangaroos where we are. So I keep saying to the other dads, now's not the time to worry about the academic advancement, but to focus on not damaging that connection or the experience with the kids. And I think there'll be some fond memories. We make the blanket forts, and she gets to choose her dinners and what we want to cook together, and so a lot of that stuff. So there'll be some good memories that come out of it, and that's what I try and impress on people. Is it different or is it difficult? One is true and the other one is an attitude, and I think a lot of our kids will pick up on that attitude. And there are a lot of dads doing it hard who are tasked with the outdated breadwinner role, where they're trying to be so stoic and keep everything on and worried about keeping the roof over their head and the food on the table. And that's what I really noticed. This didn't cause a lot of the problems. It's just exposed them and exacerbate them. And, this is a real wake-up call where it's all the eggs in the one basket type thing that is really come to fruition.
There's some wise words there, and we'll come back in just a tick to discuss your role as a dad, because we want to find out how you became the campaigner, the man off the internet that you are. And obviously your daughter played a key role in that story, but let's just knock off the standard stuff that we do every week of checking in with everybody. Ian, after however many weeks it's been, how are you?
I'm pretty good actually this week. I had a couple of weeks holiday leading in. Took the kids we went as a family to kind of fairly locally, Chichester on the south coast. Did some exploring, kayaking, a bit of outdoor stuff. I took them. When I saw my dad for the first time. He's been shielding since March time, so we were able to get down to Somerset and see him with my two, and they enjoyed it a lot more than they thought they were going to, because sometimes it's a bit of I go to see Grandad, it's a trail, I'm in the car for too long, and it'll be wet, and we're not going to see anyone we know. It'll be a museum. It's like, I took them to the cider museum when it was wet, which they enjoyed more than I thought. And I went to the shop and that kind of thing. So that was good. Cider museum's great. You got to connect with your history in that way. But this week, my two went back on Wednesday. Went back to primary school. My daughter's in year 6 now, which seems kind of unimaginable, that I've got a child who's at the top of primary school, and my son's in year 3, so he's upper school. They've really enjoyed it. We've really enjoyed them going back. Wednesday, when I had 6 hours ahead of me where I could just pick and choose and decide, apart from a couple of calls, I could decide how I was going to spend my time. So that was really good, and a really positive story in terms of attendance. So 95% day one and 97% in the primary school day two, which suggests that there's both an appetite for kids being back in a school learning environment, but also that kids aren't sick yet. So fingers crossed that continues. So yeah, I'm pretty chipper, I think would be a good expression to use today. How about you, James? Because I know your children are possibly back at school, but they didn't go back on the same day, did they, this week?
Yeah, no, little one went back on Wednesday, eldest went back today, so brilliant, like you, 6 hours ahead of me to get my head straight and get some work done. Oh, and the website all the technology's given up on me this morning. I won't say, I don't want to get the explicit on the old YouTube video, so I won't say the word I've been using a lot this morning. Oh, come on. But, to some extent, I'm trying to be positive about it. I think, all through the lockdown, I had bigger things to worry about than technology acting up. Now this is very much back to normal. That I'm swearing at a computer. This is normality for me, basically. So I'm trying to be positive about that. But I would like it if the tech would actually work at some point today. But we'll see how that goes. So no, trying to be positive about that. But it's interesting to hear what Michael's saying about second lockdown, because I think that's the thing that we're all worried about. I don't think there has to be a second lockdown, but I think it's certainly something that I think we've all got in the back of our minds. Like you say, It's interesting that the kids are back at school and things are going well so far, touch wood.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out in the days and weeks. There's going to be outbreaks, which is going to be the first school, particularly in Parliament. Looking forward to that. Well, how long before somebody in Parliament catches it? Because they were all in the pub on whatever it was, Thursday night.
Right, yeah, that's
we've
true.
got all that to look forward to. Let's just come back to we mentioned Michael's daughter. Well, I mean, you tell me. As I understand it, it was an issue at a ballet school that sort of set you on the path to being a sort of campaigning dad. Is that fair, or were you a raving feminist and a campaigning dad before that?
No, James. That's what I try and explain to everyone. I was your typical clueless, normal. Grew up in a family where dad was the breadwinner, mum stayed at home. You get in trouble, wait till your dad comes home. All of the standard things. I don't think I ever told my dad I loved him face to face until his last year when he was sick with lung cancer, because it just wasn't something that we did. And when I tried to tell him, he wouldn't let me get it out. It was, it's like, no, Dad, I just want to, because he was sick, he was on oxygen. It was, no, I know, and just, and that was our love fest. But it was never in doubt, and he did everything for the greatest dad, and I had the greatest childhood. But I would have walked into that as well until I separated Charlie was 9 months old. And what happened was I was sick for a little while we separated. 2 weeks after we'd separated, I had a small car accident, and they just took me in to scan my neck, and they found a whole lot of lumps and bumps and bits and pieces that shouldn't have been there. And suddenly my future wasn't guaranteed. And it was at that point there, I call it the gift of the clarity from crisis. Everything that was like a burning house, what was I going to rush in? The only thing I could think of was my daughter may not even remember me at 9 months old. It's fair to say it was an acrimonious separation. So what she would learn about me wasn't, and that was the only thing that mattered. And going through the treatment, the whole thing was, gee, am I going to get through this? Can I get through it? And she was the only thing that mattered. So from that point forward is where I put my head down and said, I'm going to rearrange my life so that she's the priority. Thankfully, going through the divorce court at the time, it actually worked really well for me. The judge wanted to ensure that she had fond, firm memories going forward. So we went to 50-50 at 9 months old, which was unheard of. Then the judge was great. And sadly, her mum stepped out of her life when she was 2 years old. Has played no part since. The ballet school, we had ballet at 3 years old, great concert. Again, I'm the only dad there. At 4 years old, our ballet concert, we get the notice with all mummy and me ticket offers. Mums are expected to be available for the full 3-hour dress rehearsal, and all of the mums. And I'd become used to separating out mum for dad, even in Dr. Seuss books, editing on the fly and ruining any sentence for rhyme. But when we're having the meeting, the pre-concert meeting, it's, well, at the bottom it was, and there are no males allowed in the backstage area. So it was, oh, well, they know me, I'm part of the school, I'm the only dad that's ever here, it's just a misprint. And so at the meeting, it's, well, the bit I have to be there at the end where it says no males. And they said, oh, Michael, if you bring it to the backstage door, we can look after it. And I said, well, that would be fine if you're going to look after everyone else's child. But, you know, she can't be the only kid backstage without a parent. Then they asked if she had a nanny or an aunt. She's got both of those, but I'm her dad. Then all of the other mums jumped up to my defence and said, well, if Michael can't be there, we're not going to be there either. And they balked, and at the meeting I said, we're going to have to come to something. And then someone managed to contact the Equal Opportunity and Anti-Discrimination and the local paper. And then it got kicked up to the national paper, and then it got kicked up to national news, and then it just went nuts. Yeah. And fair to say, when I walked back into the ballet school, it was a little bit sort of high, because when they rang the ballet school, they asked me if I'd mind if they contacted them, and I said, no, great. They did a no comment. And that's why I said to them, they went crook at me, but they said I dropped them in it and they didn't like being it. At that stage, Australia was having the marriage equality debate. And that's why I said to them, soon you're going to have 2 dads, 2 mums. You're the liberal arts. You're meant to be the bastion of contemporary thinking and liberal, you know, thought. And here you are going, like, we can't have a male backstage. This would have been a perfect opportunity for you to say thanks to the wonderful diverse community we have, and you know, we're happy to do it, and marriage equality is going to be a thing, and yeah, they just dirtied up.
Why did it's interesting, why did it become such a big issue then? Because you know, it's a fairly, let's face it, you know, obviously it's important to you, but in the grand scheme of things, it's you know, it's a squabble at a ballet school to some extent. But then it gets picked up in the national news. Now, was it just because of that, you know, that atmosphere that included the equal marriage debate, or is it something James, more fundamental about the sort of change in society in general, and particularly in Australia?
I think they saw it. I got it from both sides, and I still get it from both sides today. I get men saying to me, you're not a real man if you know, don't want to do this and don't want to do this. And I get mums on the other side saying, it's unfair that you get this attention for just doing what we do day in and day out. And I also get other mums saying to me, you'll never understand what it's like to be a mother and to carry them for 9 months, and it's a different connection. And that's why I say to them, I agree, I would never understand that. But somehow you can speak with great clarity and confidence about my experience and my love as a dad. But it's not only us dads that you're diminishing our love for, it's step, adoptive, foster, same-sex dads who have achieved through surrogacy, and mums, grandparents who are put into the role of, you know, primary carer, and the love that their children have fed. That stuff is what's holding women back as much as the outdated macho, you know, outdated masculine things. As much as men don't want to let go of some of that, there's a lot of women who find great identity and validation in their mothering thing. And we need to, the whole equality debate at the moment, it's become like a football match with sides to be barracked for and against. And it's doing great harm in the equality debate. It's limiting all of us. But I'm not sure why it kicked off. I think it's just because my daughter's a cute little kid. I'm a big, ugly old bouncer. And it just, you know, and it wasn't the men's rights, you know, those horrible, you know, misogynistic, our rights. And that's what I kept saying to everyone. Please don't think it's a men's rights issue. It's simply, I can't have my daughter look around the room at ballet and go, with a parent, with a parent, with a parent, and here I am on my own. And it's no fault of her own. And there was no option. I wasn't being bloody minded or saying it I didn't want to be an advocate or a warrior or anything like that at that stage. I just wanted my daughter not to be made to feel different.
Yeah, and as you say, it's an equality issue. I mean, if all the literature says mum, then in couples where there are a mum and a dad, the mum is going to feel it's her that has to go and do it. There's an expectation. Yep. It puts more pressure on her. So if it's parent, then it leaves people to make decisions as they see fit, doesn't it? Well, let's face it, this is why Ian and I are involved in this sort of stuff to some extent. It's exactly that. It's about freeing everyone up, get rid of stereotypes.
I think for too long, the equality debate has parked the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff here. They've tried to find an equitable solution to the unequal things that have caused, rather than trying to fix the inequality. So at the moment, with the COVID thing, we hear a lot about childcare as women are being held back by childcare, not being available and not being free and not being that. Well, it's not women, it's families, and it's whoever is the carer. And as long as they keep framing it as a women's issue, it will remain a women's issue, because they exclude and alienate half of the stakeholders, because it's sadly the rule of self-interest. It always dominates. And so when I speak to a lot of dads, I say, how are you with women's rights? Yes, they should have it. Yep, 100%, I'm for it. What are you doing to help? What do you mean? I say, well, just being for it, not being against it, isn't actually being for it. And that's why I say, if they actually framed it as a family or a parental issue, all of a sudden our ears might prick up and we go, well, hang on, yes, that does affect me. And that's why I say, when they talk about how even the term working mums drives me mad. They're working parents. So if you want to we're all working parents. 60% of us parents, mums are working. There's very few of them are stay-at-home mums.
Yeah, identify as working parents. That's the problem. That's the problem. As the editor of Working Dads, I need to explain that. If you have a site called Working Parents, nobody thinks of themselves as a working parent. And I take your point. Absolutely, working mums is a thing, whereas working dads is not. Nobody talks about being a working dad. People talk about being a working mum, or why. But unfortunately, nobody thinks of themselves as a working parent. And there's some interesting research that people don't identify with being a parent. They consider themselves either a mum or a dad, and that's something we need to go over. That's something we need to work on.
Even that breadwinner role, where they say, "Oh, you were the breadwinner, so you weren't involved." Breadwinning is one of the most vital, fundamental parts of caregiving. When you look at the outcomes for the 20% of children who live in poverty and single mums, you don't say, well, you're a breadwinner, you can't be a carer. And what's happened with a breadwinner, when they say, well, it's separate, it's allowed workplaces to be willfully blind to our responsibility as parents. So you're here to work, someone else is giving the caregiving, and that, even primary and secondary, it has the ability to diminish the connection, not only between father and children, but between mothers and employers. So primarily, you're a caregiver, you're here secondarily, so I'm not going to give you that much, authority or advancement opportunities or anything like that, because I know that, your primary thing. And that's what I say, if you want a committed worker, get a parent, because putting bread on the table makes my job pretty important when I'm the only one, able to feed my daughter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mike, I think it's really interesting, some really great stuff there. In terms of your journey into advocacy, obviously it started with a ballet story. How did it develop over time, and what sort of things did you learn about as you started talking about your story and what it meant and what it could mean to other dads?
One of the main things I've come to learn, Ian, is the stories and the similarities between dads. We all have the same thing, that the dad guilt. At the moment, it's a great time to be a dad, but it's that straddling two chasms at the moment where we want to be more involved, we're encouraged to be more involved, but we have all these obligations. We still earn more, which is a problem. So here in Australia, there are 2 weeks available for partner pay, 2 weeks at minimum pay.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of dads. There's a lot of finger pointing and blaming that goes on in the equality debate, saying that dads don't want to do it and all the rest of it. But we simply can't. It's a financial decision when I'm earning, 2.5 to 3 times what my wife is earning, and I want to take 6 months off, and only 50% of employers offer it. Straight away, then the tone and trajectory for the parental role is set in that first month. So we want to be the best dad, we want to be the best partner, so we fall into the assistant role because we come home, baby gets handed to us, baby doesn't settle, we're not sure what we're doing, so we turn to mum and go, what do I do? What should I do? And she tells us what to do, and we do exactly as we're told because we think it's the best thing. And straight away, it's self-perpetuating cycle over and over. And then we have all the fetishized images of mum, only a mother knows, maternal instinct, all of these other things that lead us to believe. And I know I'm studying developmental psychology at the moment, and I'll sit in a group of mums and I'll be terrified that they find out I write for a parenting thing because I get challenged and I don't want to have to try and defend myself. And they say, oh, what makes you the expert? And I say, well, I'm not. I think it's because I'm just a normal bloke and it's not that hard, manage to get it done. It's so hard if, you take it seriously. Well, I'm pretty sure I take it seriously, but it's not that hard, and it's so I have that imposter syndrome still being a parent, and, I've managed to keep her alive. And
good enough is good enough. What we come back
Yeah.
to again in this podcast, don't we? It's one of the mantras that we have.
Yep.
So I just want to mention previously, it looked like I was looking at my phone because I was. Because I was looking up just when you were talking about COVID and the cost on people's careers. 9:30 on the 16th of September, the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, with whom I do some work, have an event. Get registered for it, because exactly that. I mean, it's the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, and absolutely we should be talking about how women have been affected by COVID. But let's get our voices into the conversation as well. Let's not make our voices the only ones in the conversation, clearly. But I think you're right.
It's when it comes to impact on genders, it's not an either or, it's an and. It's an and that's why I keep saying 6 out of 8 suicides in this country, I'm not sure what it is globally, are men. Yeah. Men are tasked with all of these things, and it's funny when it happens to us blokes, it's because we don't do this, we don't talk, we don't do all this, but it's because we're trapped in that little box that this is what a man is and this is what a man does, and all of society, everything. That's why I said that the fact we don't have change tables in men's toilets, and the fact that we, our first point of contact for new parents here in Victoria is called the Maternal and Child Health Centre. Maternal. I've never been made to feel more like a third wheel. So we know now that up to 1 in 7 dads suffering with postnatal depression. What a perfect opportunity to screen dads, because guess what? If dad's not functioning well, he can't support mum well, and the little wedges that happen in the beginning of the relationship where mum doesn't feel she's being supported, dad feels, oh, I can't really say anything because, it's got nothing to do with me. I've got to look after mum. And straight away, it starts from the beginning, and it just gets worse as we go along.
Yeah, and we've had some terrible male suicide statistics in this country just this week. They're a record high, aren't they, among young men, or younger men? And the answer, of course, is to talk about this stuff and to get help, which is the name of the newly relaunched tips section of this podcast as we rattle towards the end of our allotted time.
Yeah.
Who's got a tip? Ian, have you got a tip for dads this week?
Yeah, I think that I was thinking back around keeping in touch with the things that went well during lockdown. What was it about? What were those magic moments, those times you had possibly as a family doing things differently, and reflecting on how you can then tap into them and continue them on? What was it about what you did that made a difference? Those TP moments that Michael was talking about, those dens, those forts. How can we recreate some of those elements of things that went well in an environment where it's quite easy to drift back into how we always did things? So our movie night, Saturday night movie night, is continuing in our house. We're rattling through a whole host of films. We did Back to the Future last week, which is still a good film. So the kids. So that's one of the things that we're doing. I think we're doing a walk this weekend, which was one of the highlights of our lockdown, was going out for little local walks as a family and exploring areas we hadn't seen before.
Michael, do you have a tip, or I mean, beyond change the society? Do you have a fairly a brief and quick tip that you would give to other men from your experience?
My biggest one, James, is the moments between the moments. So instead of waiting for the holidays and the weekends and things like that, that 15 minutes at the end of the day on the bed, just lying on the bed, chatting, reading a story, the walking past the room, if Charlie's in there, instead of just walking past, going in, sitting on the floor. So there's all those micro minutes that I say pay a compounding interest that go into that connection bank. When they're outside, get outside for 5 minutes, throw the netball around, and then get back in. And that's where the magic and the gold lies, not in the big gestures, I think.
Yeah.
What about you, James?
Oh, I've got less than a minute. It is. I did a podcast with Aviva this week, who of course are a company who are very good on dads and parental rights and all the rest of it. And they were talking about what can employers do to support parents in the new environment. To which I had to think of a way of saying it, and I can say it on this podcast: don't be a dick. I mean, that is basically the advice to employers: is just give people a bit of space, understand the situation they have, understand what we've just been through in the last 6 months, and it was stressful for all of us. Just be human to your employees, and it works both ways, I guess. Employees should be human to their bosses as well, and don't be difficult. That's my tip, and we'll have more next week. We better round this up quickly before we get cut off. Go!
We've still got a minute. It's okay. Michael, where can people go to learn more about what you do?
michaelray.com.au, and as you say, they'll see me all over the internet, but website's the best place. So michaelray.com.au.
Perfect. Michael, it's been a pleasure having you with us. This has been episode 1 of season 2 of Lockdown Dads. I've been Ian Dinwiddie.
I've been James Miller, and he's been Michael Ray. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.